Again, Dean Hess, esteemed trustees and faculty members and staff members, and fellow students. It's an honor and a great pleasure to speak to you this morning. The idea of Convocation is to call us together to mark the end of summer recess and the beginning of the school year. My mother, who taught elementary school for 4 decades, used to say that her 3 favorite things about being a teacher were June, July, and August. But that was also her way of saying that teachers and students aren't so different after all. For there are few occasions so invigorating to old teachers as the beginning of the school year, when we're reminded not only of our own beginnings as unimaginably young freshmen, but of our continual re-beginnings in those studies which always outrun us, yet whose pursuit seldom fails to delight us. That's why I hailed my fellow students. Doctors are different from patients. Lawyers have little in common with their clients. But teachers, by which I mean good ones, always remain students, though admittedly with some bottle age. Not for nothing did Chaucer say of his scholar, "Gladly did he learn, and gladly teach." From the beginning, Claremont McKenna College directed young and old scholars alike to the meeting ground of public affairs and liberal arts. In its short history, the college has employed different terms to describe this special focus. In the early days, it extolled political economy as a wide-ranging study that would prepare students for a world shaken and shaped by crisis. The Great Depression, World War II, the nascent Cold War. Nowadays, we are prone to speak of our special niche, at least in shorthand terms, as involving the study of leadership, or at least the cultivation of would-be leaders in economics, politics, and other arts and sciences. We describe our students, we describe you, as leaders in the making, which by most measures of our graduates' achievements would seem to be a safe prediction. Yet leadership is in some respects an elusive, even morally ambiguous quality. There are, of course, good leaders and bad leaders, but the point I want to make is slightly different from that. You cannot have leaders without followers, and especially in a democratic country, this inescapable inequality galls. The desire to be a leader, even for the noblest purposes, is a desire to have followers. The wish to have a leader, often heard in American politics over many, many years, is a wish to be yourself a follower. Of course, if everyone could be a leader simultaneously, and no one ever a follower, that would solve the problem. But such magic is impossible even in America, where, as Alan Bloom once remarked, Kant's groundwork of the metaphysics of morals would have to have been titled "The Categorical Imperative and 10 Ways to Make It Work for You." Another way out of the dilemma, of course, would be to take turns at being leader. But that doesn't sound much like leadership. Maybe at Pitzer. Leaders and followers are not new phenomena, to be sure. The ancient Greeks spoke of the leader. Their word was hegemon, or hegemon, now a sort of cant word in international relations studies. And the Romans had a word for it too. But these terms were often connected to military command. And politically, they pointed to accounts of civic life that were highly illiberal, at least insofar as they conceived of politics as a form of ruling. This understanding persists, at least in a sedimentary way, in our terms monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy, the rule of one, few, and many. But leadership of this sort, pointing to the asserted right to rule over others, often without their consent, is not what CMCers or our fellow citizens have in mind when they admire leadership. But it does help explain the little-known fact that the founders of the American Republic were not keen on leadership. We think of them, generally speaking, as great leaders, but they didn't usually call themselves that, and not merely out of modesty. There was something about leadership they distrusted. To take an example, in The Federalist, the famous defense of the Constitution, beloved of every student in Gov 20. The terms leader and leaders are used 14 times, all but twice pejoratively. A dozen times, the book criticizes factious leaders, favorite leaders, artful leaders, and so forth, for their demagogic excesses. In short, the word is almost a synonym for dangerous knaves who rouse the people's passions in order to lead them to vicious and illegal acts which the people themselves would later regret. The exceptions in the Federalist prove the rule. The authors refer twice to the patriot leaders of the Revolution. That is, leaders can be respectable when operating in a kind of crisis in which tyranny can be avoided only by throwing off the existing law, using military force to defeat the oppressor's might, and substituting new laws and constitutions. In such an emergency, the people may and must be directly led in a quasi-military way, but with the goal of sheathing the sword and restoring civilian rule as fast as prudently possible. To the potentially boundless sway of leaders and the intoxicated and degraded obedience of followers, the founders preferred the equality of fellow citizens under the sober rule of law, crowned by the kind of statesmanship that is the servant of good laws and constitutional order. They admired George Washington precisely because he never turned into a leader. He became a founder and an office holder who gladly surrendered his offices and who sedulously labored to enhance the people's capacity to govern themselves, the father, not the Führer of his country. The founders sought a government that would represent the people, not so much lead them, because they feared leadership's unrepublican tendencies. Today, by contrast, we tend to regard leadership ability as a prime qualification for high and even low office. What happened? With the rise by the late 19th century of large democracies with tens of millions of citizens and the need for mass political parties to organize these millions, the stage was set for a rehabilitation of leadership.